Good afternoon. Welcome to the March meeting of the MACC Area Coordinating Council Policy Board. We are in the fine city of Zeeland at the Howard Miller Community Center. And I'd like to begin the session today by introduction. So if we could start on my left with the Honorable Jim Story.
Thank you, Chair. Jim Story, Allegan County Board of Commissioners.
Howard Bauman, Port Sheldon Township. Ken DeWeer, Fillmore Township.
Terry Hoffmeyer, Lake Town Township.
Tom Bird, Ottawa Road Commission. Jerry Huntberger, Park Township.
Steve Boltz, Executive Director of MACC.
Blaine Copes, the MACC.
Al Mayer, Zeeland, Carter Township.
Planning so Allegan County Road Commission.
Walters, Allen Township.
Kevin Plains from the City of Zeeland. Rustin Slav with the MACC Authority Board.
Good. Gallery?
Oh, yeah, very old member of the band.
Former.
Leanne Mikesell from the Department of Transportation. I'm the new Transportation Service Center Manager in the City of Knox.
Very welcome. And over here, staff.
Sure. Elisa Hookwater with the MACC.
Kelly Goward with the MACC. Carolyn Alstead with the MACC.
Aaron Spicer with the MACC.
Good, thank you very much. If you have an opportunity to glance at your minutes, we'd be looking for approval of the February 22nd minutes that were enclosed.
So moved.
We have motion, do we have, and we do have support.
So it was moved by Kevin and supported by Russ. Was that you?
Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Public comment. Anyone of the illustrious public wish to comment? Okay, they wish to remain silent at this point. So we'll move on to number 3, and it is the Community Enhancement Program Framework. And Steve, I believe you have information on this.
Yes, indeed. Including your agenda packet is the culmination of several months of work of the Community Service Delivery Committee. It's been a few months since the committee has been together, but it's not because they haven't been working on something. And today we want to share with you what has been a primary focus of that group for some time. As I mentioned, we get together the third Wednesday of every month, first thing in the morning over at the MACC office, and we continue to focus our time and energy on the list of 21 opportunities for new and enhanced collaborations, and that has really been a good focus. But even within those 21, I mean, we receive updates and so forth regarding those, but really the group had made a decision a few months, well, several months back now, that we're going to have a couple priority areas of focus. And one was to take a look at what was listed as regional funding for regional assets. So that was kind of listed in that group of 21. And essentially, I mean, the basic premise behind the reason it got on the list initially was a recognition that there are assets that provide a regional benefit and are deserving of regional support. So that was where we began that process, and it, as I said, resulted in the document that you have and we're going to review today. But essentially, if you have a copy, or your copy that was included in the agenda packet in front of you, and you turn to the first page of that report, you'll notice there, right there at the top, is the goal of what we call the Community Enhancement Program: to support efforts that serve public purposes, or what we've been discussing as and labeling the common good. What are those things that help us all? And will have an enduring positive effect on the quality of life and economic vitality of the greater Holland-Zeeland community. So that is really, at the outside, want to make clear what the goal of the Community Enhancement Program is all about. And not only that, because you'll find, if you had a chance to review the report and some of the assets that have been identified there, many of you are already individually supporting some or many of those assets already. I think the idea here, and it was really embedded in an underlying underpinning of this document, is that through collaboration, we believe that there's a an opportunity to, in a better way, support, maintain, and improve those assets. So as the group was thinking about regional assets, we put no parameters, no restraints, conditions on what a regional asset might be. I mean, Service Delivery Committee members could identify any asset that they wanted to. We began with an initial list of 30 that were identified by the group. And we said, okay, now, having identified some of those, we should really go through some kind of an evaluation, and we ended up doing a ranking process I'm going to talk about in just a moment. And they said, okay, as we're discussing these, as we're looking at them, how do we go about evaluating them? And we came up with several different items that we used in the evaluation and ranking process. They're listed on the screen there and detailed a little bit more on page 1 of the document there. So again, one thing we looked at was publicly available, but when you look at the detail included on page 1 of the report, publicly available is the asset, a facility, or a service available to the general public. Fees and access limitations may apply. So certainly you're going to see some assets here, whether it be Big Red or a museum or the Arts Council, that might have some fees or restrictions to access imposed on them, but that's what publicly, in some sense, they were still publicly available. What's the asset a landmark? Does it create a regional awareness? Is the asset recognized by a majority of residents? If you show a picture of it to someone and ask if they know what or where it is, that the person can identify that. You know, does it have that landmark type of quality? Does that asset attract new or retain existing residents? So as an asset is a positive factor in the location decision of a prospective resident or keeping a resident in the area. Destination, does the asset attract both local and non-local residents and visitors? Economic development impact, does the asset make a significant contribution to the creation of jobs and or significantly stimulates the local economy? Does that asset have a historical or cultural significance? Is it recognized as historically or culturally significant by area residents? Does it have some sort of environmental value? That is, does it provide environmental benefits to local residents through its very essence or being? You'll see some of those, the Macatower Greenway, the watershed, Lake Mac, the dunes, Lake Michigan, and so forth. Recreational value, does it provide recreational benefits to local residents? And then lastly, educational value, does the asset provide educational benefits either through programming or interpretive signage, if it might be a natural asset? And through that, the user gains new information or knowledge from experiencing it. So a little definition on what those evaluation factors were. And then we went through a ranking process. So we took those 30 assets, we applied those various ranking criteria to them, and came up with a listing. Now, I want to point out that the listing of regional assets is identified more on page 2, weren't necessarily the ones that rose to the top of the list. In fact, only a couple of the regional assets identified on page 2 were our top ranked assets. Here are the listing of the top, 6 or 7 there, that came out on top. Our asset, if it got a perfect score, got 5. So the one that rose to the top ended up being Holland State Park. It received a 4 out of 5, followed by Lake Michigan's and the Dunes, the Tulip Festival, Windmill Island and Gardens, Lake Macatawa, the watershed, downtown Holland and Hope College were the top ranked assets. And you can see those there. So the next step in the process was the application of that question highlighted at the bottom of the slide. So we have these 30. They've now been evaluated and ranked. And the question we asked ourselves was, can the collective action of the 9 cities and townships represented on the Service Delivery Committee make a difference for these regional assets? So the group, came to the conclusion with several, especially of the top ranked ones, that they didn't believe there was a need, or through the collective action of the 9 local units could make a difference. So Lake Michigan, of course, maybe the best thing that we can do for Lake Michigan is taking care of our watershed, for instance. You know, the group agreed that Holland State Park, by and large, is run well by the state, doesn't need any additional support by the local units of government. Likewise with Tulip Time Festival, they've got a great fundraising machine out there, you know, garners a lot of local support. Seems like they're doing fine, and so forth. Hope College, you know, I think they've got 21 people on their development staff or something like that, I've heard. You know, they're doing fine in terms of supporting themselves and carrying out the programming and so forth that happens at the campus. So in that regard, that list was kind of narrowed down and really ended up being the 14 or 15 included on page 2 that are listed there. So Windmill Island, one of the top ranked ones. Big Red, you know, the committee acknowledged there are some access issues there, but certainly a landmark, certainly attracts residents, scored very well, stayed on the list. Holland Historical Trust, the Holland Museum and so forth, Felt Mansion, the Holland Area Arts Council, the Decker Heights Museum here in downtown Zeeland, the New Groningen School Museum. It was very interesting. I'm kind of a local history buff, so I was aware of that, but several members of the Service Delivery Committee learned about that local historical asset located just a little bit to the east of us, or a little bit to the west of us here. Ottawa Beach Pump House down by Holland State Park, the Symphony, as well as the Holland Corral, the McIntyre Greenway Network. And then there was another one a little bit more nebulous than maybe some of the other assets that I just mentioned, but it was the rural community, and you'll notice the parentheses behind there, the recognition that our rural areas you know, are very important to the character of the overall MACC area. And so whereas it may not be as much of a physical asset or a point in place type of asset, there's, I think, a real understanding, and Ken helped, you know, and Todd really helped the group understand, you know, the importance of the rural community, its contributions to the overall character of the community. And I know for those of us who, you know, might live in an urbanized area and want to get out into a little more rural setting, you don't have to travel too far in the MACC area, you know, to appreciate and enjoy a more rural setting. The harbor dredging, as well as waterfront enhancements, and then lastly, the West Michigan Regional Airport. So those were the ones that, out of those 30, and applying that question at the bottom, those were the ones that were selected and included in the report. And there's just a figure of some of those that noted in the report there. So then, beginning at the bottom of page 2 and continuing on into the third page of the report, you know, there was a lot of questions that the Service Delivery Committee looked at in terms of, okay, so we identified those assets, we ranked those assets. Now, you know, how do we talk about what might be the manner in which we go about supporting those, maintaining them, hopefully improving them as well. And we looked at a couple different things. The question came up numerous times during the committee's deliberations as to, you know, how would a financial support structure look like? And so what was included in the document is a concept for how financial support might be developed. It's based on a pro rata share of a specific number. 100,000 was included in the report. And then the pro rata share based on population. So if you had a chance to take a look at the chart there, you know, essentially whatever the percentage population of the MACC area is related to the various townships and in cities, based on a base of 100,000, you can see there what the contribution would be from each local unit of government. So a concept in terms of what financial support might look like. There were a lot of questions about governance. You know, how, if we talk about what in terms of assets, level of funding, how is this going to go about? How would those funds be allocated? So you'll note that in the report itself, We're following the MACC model here, whether you're a smaller unit of government, larger unit of government, have a smaller tax base, have a billion plus tax base. When you come around this table, you each get one vote. And that's the governance structure that's been carried forward as a conceptual framework for this effort as well. One representative, one vote. And then, of course, is the purposes and uses of these funds. So we've talked about the assets, but what are some of the activities? And at the bottom of page 3 and on to the top of page 4 are some examples of how these funds may be utilized. So certainly, I think a lot of us, when we look at these various assets, it's easy for us to think about potential capital projects that could be undertaken as part of those, but there were discussions about other potential uses of funds as well, and they're enumerated there. It might be we're talking about a new way of delivering a service, and what we really need to do is bring in some outside expertise and do a pilot or look at a study type of situation. So there might be funding set aside to do a study or best practices review. This body it's been a few years now, has brought in experts, out-of-town experts, to speak about various topics. David Rusk was one example we talked about in the Service Delivery Committee meeting. He came, I believe, in the late 90s, talked about urbanization and so forth. We were dealing with a lot of issues pertaining to growth at that time, so he had ideas related to that, so we had an expert come in. So there might be a topic that may be of interest where we want some outside expertise to come, so that we could have a speaker on something like that. Special exhibits, special events. Again, these might be things by some of those regional assets, whether it be a chorale or the symphony or the Holland Area Arts Council, or thinking about a special event and looking for some support for a program of that nature. We could envision the CEP being a part of bringing something like that to the area. And then we talked a little bit about pilot projects or demonstrations. And then lastly, certainly we may engage in something that requires training on the part of maybe all the units of government or a portion thereof. And so funds could be spent on that. So it's not necessarily, I think a lot of times there was, you immediately gravitate to a capital project. Oh, we're thinking about putting in this bridge, or we want to make this enhancement to this structure or so forth. But certainly the document hopefully helps the reader understand that it could go beyond capital projects to programming, events, things of that nature as well. And then certainly in terms of allocation, again, there are lots of details to be worked out. The concept included in the document speaks more to a process similar to what is used for the transportation projects. How that is done is we send out a call for projects to those around this table, those who have a seat here. When we do a call for projects, we don't open it up to the general public. The idea envisioned or concept contained in this report is we would not be doing something like a community foundation does, where they say, hey, twice a year we're accepting proposals. That's not envisioned at this point for this effort either, that rather it would become those ideas and potential projects for funding would come from those who are involved in participating in the community enhancement project, and that is really follows how we do business on the transportation side as well. The concluding paragraph, and you had a chance to read my cover memo regarding this. I tried to emphasize it there, and I certainly want to finish with emphasizing it here, that what you have in front of you here is a framework. It is a general direction in terms of what the Service Delivery Committee has put together, and we think is a good direction in which to head. However, I just want to emphasize nothing is final. These are concepts. They will need some refinement and revision, certainly. I think Don Comian framed it very well in some of his comments in saying, this, where we're at right now, is at a place where we've taken a kind of a first look at it, but he makes it very clear that, his board still has some questions, concerns that as we go through the refinement process, he's going to need to have those answered in terms of levels of funding. His board has told him they have some concerns about yet the legality of some of the efforts. Townships need to be engaged in funding and supporting financially things that they can do so legally. So that's a point he's made all along as well. So there's a lot of things to go on. I liken it a lot to the journey we took when we put together the Macatawa Area Express. So we started with an idea. In that particular case, the idea was the area had changed and the way that we were providing public transit needed to change with it. So there was the idea. That got some attention and refinement. We got it to the point, we did some studies in that particular case. That was done by the MACC. We brought kind of a refined, but still unfinished concept to this board. They endorsed it, which is the action that we're talking about today. And then at that point, we talked to various members regarding public transit. City of Holland, Holland Charter Township, the City of Zeeland said it sounded good. Park Township, Lake Town Township said, I don't think we're interested at this time. And so those who were still interested in continuing the journey did so. We set up a subcommittee. It was called the Transit Implementation Subcommittee. Worked through all the details in terms of what that service would look like, its final costs and so forth, and then brought the final product back for action. I envision a similar process occurring with this effort. So today, we're kind of at that step in the process where we're looking and asking for endorsement from the policy committee. We had an idea, we've kind of refined the idea and have given it a framework, a general direction, recognizing there are still lots of refinements and details, although a general direction hopefully has been outlined in the report here. So we're here today, and the action, or the request for action before you today is an endorsement of the Community Enhancement Program. And again, when we talk about endorsement, we want to be very clear of what that means. A, that you agree that the CEP has potential to have a positive regional impact and is worthy of both MACC staff time and effort to continue to work with those members who are interested on the refinement and revision process. So the motion for your consideration is to endorse the Community Enhancement Framework and authorize MACC staff to continue its refinement along with interested members.
Go ahead.
Are you looking for a motion now?
Motion or discussion, wherever.
I'd move to put it on the table. I think it's a great concept. Is that what you're looking for now?
Yeah.
Got it. I move.
Okay, Jerry moves. Do we have any support?
I'll support it.
And we have support. Now discussion. Jerry?
This reminds me, first of all, I really compliment you and service delivery and everybody that's been involved in this. It kind of reminds me of some work that some of us did with our friend Greg Holcomb, who happens to be sitting in the audience, the Riverside Group, 3 years ago, when we started to try and look at how we could work better together through some regional concepts and work. And this actually takes it a step further, even though it's still work in progress. It puts a lot of meat and potatoes on it and helps everybody visualize a little bit what the potential could be. And I think it should make for some very interesting discussion here, but also at local boards. I know that this is exactly what the Park Township Board actually has had in their strategic plan for the last 3 years. So I compliment.
I like the governance aspect of it, how we're one unit, or every unit has one voice, and I like that part of it. I think that's a very important part along the lake shore to continue that model. I like that stuff behind it. That's just kind of speaking for myself.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Port Sheldon Township, we're right on the fringe of the MACC area. We have a very, very small urbanized area that even allows us to be part of this. Much of our community heads north to Grand Haven. they take advantage of some of their regional assets. I'm probably going to be voting no, but our board will look at case by case if something comes up, and I still would welcome staff to come and present it to our board. So that's where I'm at. If you hear my no vote, that's why.
Any further discussion?
We're probably in the same position as Howard is between Allendale, Brainhaven, you know, we got Holland, Zealand stuff, but I know it's a framework that's going into place and stuff, but it still comes down to, I'd almost like to see a little more detail on it before it gets to that point of, support stuff's where we're at with it at this time, so. Not saying you aren't gonna work with people in certain areas, but definitely is, I think there's some good aspects to it by all means, but.
So you may be in the same place in terms of a case by case.
Case by
You know, if
case.
we're looking at an agricultural type of effort that, we can come back to our township board and say, hey, this is what the group is thinking.
We're not talking big funds for Holland Township, honestly. I mean, compared to Holland Township, Park Township, everything else, we're a small percentage of this thing, but just where we stand on it. And the fact that I still have, ever since we've been going through this, I've always said that I feel most of these things, if they can stand on their own, they should stand on their own. And that's just my viewpoint, where I've been with it, so.
Fillmore Township.
Yeah, as I've had the privilege of sitting on both of these boards, I've been on the service and the policy, now I make the decision. But the service committee put a lot of time and effort into this, a lot of consideration of the larger and the smaller put together. We are smaller, but I appreciate the effort and all the insight that's gone into this so far. I would be disappointed if it wasn't carried through.
Steve, what's your take on this in terms of, our seat at the table? And it seems like a local decision to me. It's probably one I feel most comfortable to abstain from, unless you think that'd be a real bad idea.
Well, I want you to have a job next week, so. So if that's where you feel you have to land, sure.
Go ahead, Terry.
Laketown Township's on the kind of southern fringe, but this is a concept that we have encouraged, and I'd like to see it continue.
Point of order. We had the benefit of having the bylaws distributed to us, which I actually read. And I came to the understanding that I have probably violated the bylaws from time to time, because I'm now aware of the fact that as a member representing transportation interests, I'm only supposed to vote on issues relating to transportation. So I've never heard the chair implement any restriction of that.
That's the first I've heard of this, Steve.
Yeah, so Tom is correct in that if you a close reading of the bylaws, there are actually 4 categories of policy committee members. You have the city township representatives, which include the 9 cities and townships. And then you have the county participants, our class, so you have Ottawa and Allegan there. And then you have the at-large board members. So there are, in the bylaws, up to 5 seats on the policy committee reserved for at-large board members. And then the remaining seats, which are comprised of the 2 road commissions, the Macatawa Area Express, and MDOT, are called the transportation participants. So when the bylaws were written and the MACC was created, of course, at that point, the MPO was a major focus. I mean, the bylaws do certainly speak to other regional efforts that could occur, and those were certainly envisioned. But the various categories were set up, and there's a clause in there that says the transportation participants are to only vote on those matters that have a transportation focus. Certainly, any matter regarding to a TIP or a unified work program or a long-range plan, some of the major elements of the transportation planning process, or any other kind of disbursement or use of US DOT funds, so the budget, they get to vote on because that contains US DOT funds and their expenditure and use. but that, by the letter of the law or by the letter of the bylaws, is indeed where their participation ends. I think historically, since many of you, maybe Terry might remember a time, because he's been on it since Terry Nienhuis has been on it since 97, when there was a closer adherence to that process. But it really, I think over time, my predecessor felt that it led to feelings of disenfranchisement, that, or, you know, people were going to say, well, let's put the transportation stuff first so I can have lunch, vote on my stuff, and be on my way. Or, so, you know, and we really know that transportation permeates so many of the other regional issues that are going on. So I think over time, that's why the chairs have not had such strict adherence to that. But indeed, that's how the bylaws are written.
Back to that question then. So later down on the agenda, we got another question in terms of how the organization operates.
That's a very good point.
Where are we with that?
So on that one, if you notice, the last article in the bylaws speaks to the process of amending the bylaws, and there it's 2/3 of the entire board. So the entire board, its composition is outlined in Article 2, the composition article. So there, the 4 categories do constitute the entire board. So in terms of bylaws revisions, it's the entire board.
So the question is, from the chair, so how do we proceed from this date forward? If indeed that is the way the bylaws are written, should transportation from now on be only limited to transportation issues?
Well, that very question was discussed at length in the nominating committee process, where the idea of the revision that is going to be up for your consideration a little bit came about. And it was actually Jerry who said, hey, you know, there are a couple different elements of the bylaws that, since my time on it, and in reality far beyond his joining the board, you know, haven't been talked about. One was the participation of transportation. Another is the annual election of at-large board members. The bylaw speaks to an organizational meeting occurring every October, in which the at-large board members will be elected by the other remaining board members. So there are a couple other elements of the bylaws that, again, over time have not been strictly adhered to. So the thinking at this is we're going to return to doing an organizational meeting, doing that in October, and the thought was at that point, you know, to try to pay closer attention to some of these other elements. So that was the thought, that starting in October we would start doing that.
So that makes it about as clear as the weather is, though.
So, I mean, certainly we can institute and adhere to the bylaws as they're written today. That certainly is, yeah, we can do that.
So is the committee comfortable with that? Which means that would preclude any transportation voting on this particular issue.
All right.
May I ask, has MDOT raised this question?
Just did.
Ever?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean.
Just did.
Oh, yes,
Well, actually, I can think of a couple different issues in the past, usually around some kind of financial participation, where transportation participants did invoke their ability to abstain. So, and MDOT probably does it the most. If you look back through our minutes over time, that has been the case.
In the information, only funding is being requested from the entities.
Right. And that's, yeah, I mean, and as you may recall, our conversation on clarity a while back, you know, that was the reason that the transportation participants weren't included that either, kind of an acknowledgement of that.
Okay, any further discussion?
Just for clarification, if we can come back to the CEP, obviously you want to get some consensus here, but would be your intent as you come around to meet with each of the local governing boards to bring this issue up, to
Right.
explain it, or would you like us to go back and do that? What's your best guess on that, Steve?
So as the next steps in the document indicate, if approved today, members choose to do it both ways. Some of you prefer that I come and kind of give the spiel and talk about that, especially if that unit of government may not have had a lot of activity or discussion at the service delivery committee level, or they just want me to be there to kind of share what I'm hearing from other members. I'm certainly willing to do that. Some prefer that they have a pretty good grasp and feel that this is pretty self-explanatory and move forward. So we're willing to do it either way in that regard.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing no further go ahead.
If I could just ask a clarifying question, and I hate to be a pain. We're very supportive of this, and I recognize everybody's in a different place. That happens on issues. And is it possible to move forward with this with a subgroup of the whole MACC? We don't need everybody to be on board, because I can appreciate where not everybody's going to have the same point of view on this thing, same level of excitement, whatever, for all kinds of reasons. Not that you don't support us doing it, but you can't justify it. So is that correct? We could have a subgroup of those that feel strongly that this has great potential and we could move forward?
Right. The only question really today is whether MACC staff are going to be along on the journey. I mean, your endorsement today authorizes me to continue to expend time and energy on it, because it's going to take time, and I mean, there's a fair amount of time and energy into this. And while this project is probably not quite as detailed and certainly doesn't have the same price tag as public transit, there will be a fair amount of work yet to be done. So, I mean, this is where there is enough consensus to say, hey, Steve, this is worth your time and effort and an expenditure of resources to keep moving along.
So that's really what the issue is.
Correct, exactly right. It's just authorizing this framework and allowing staff to continue expending staff resources on it.
If not you, who?
True. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, allowing eligible members to vote, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed?
No.
Okay, two, and abstain. 1, 2, 3. The ayes have it. That's about the most complicated vote I think I've ever. Okay, moving on to hopefully something a little more benign. Kelly.
All right, the first item that I have is an action item, but hopefully it should be a simple one with not too much discussion. And this is just kind of a going back and clearing up what we should have done already. If you'll recall, at the February Policy Committee meeting, we presented on a road stream crossing grant and then followed that up with action to designate Steve as the MACC's representative for purposes of negotiating grant contracts. There were 3 other grants that we had presented at meetings in the past that we did not ask for that action to designate Steve as our authorized representative. And we're getting to the point where we have not received official notification on these grants yet, but it should be coming soon. So we wanted to go back and request that authorization for these other 3 grants. So I've summarized those in the memo and then up on the screen here. The GLRI grant to do more work in the agricultural areas, the EPA Urban Waters grant, which was to develop a green infrastructure vision in the watershed, and then the final one was the My Corps Volunteer Stream, River, and Creek Cleanup Program grant. So just kind of collectively today, we want to ask for action to name or designate Steve Boltice as the MAC's authorized representative for purposes of negotiating any of these grant contracts should they be awarded. So I'd gladly take any questions or concerns you have about that.
Make that motion.
Support. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, call for the question. Aye.
I just wanted, I heard Howard moved it, and Ken, did you? Someone support? Todd support, okay.
Okay, we'll
Sorry.
call for the question again with a little more fervor. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. One update I wanted to provide for one of our current grants, the SAW grant, the Stormwater Asset Management and Wastewater Grant. That grant was scheduled to end March 31st this week, but we were able to get a 3-month extension on that. So it was approved through the end of June. And the big reason why we wanted to do that, or I guess maybe there's 2 reasons. One is that there's still funds left in that grant to support staff time. And then the second reason is that we really could use that extra time to get the rest of the work done for the grant itself. A major part of this grant was to support our work developing the stormwater permits for the 6 communities that we work with. And those permit applications are due April 1st. And so we are on track to have those submitted this Friday. There are additional components required by the grant in addition to the permit requirements. So there's some additional pieces that we have to put together in what they call a SAW stormwater management plan. And most of those are already done. It's just a matter of assembling those together into one stormwater management plan document. A lot of the things they require, some maps, some, the summary of what our concerns are with stormwater, they're all in the watershed management plan. But this is a separate document focusing on stormwater, so we'll just pull those pieces out of the watershed management plan and assemble them into a stormwater management plan. And then an additional task, it's on the bottom of that list there, a BMP maintenance plan, best management practice maintenance plan. That is something that we've identified with the counties as a need to go along with the post-construction standards, the county's development standards. They are working on finalizing those now. They have not been adopted yet. We will be doing outreach to the different municipalities, especially planning commissions that follow the county standards, to explain those changes. But what the new standards do, they have to meet certain requirements that the state puts in the stormwater permits, but also it opens the door for developers to use a whole host of green infrastructure and low impact development best management practices. And part of that is enforcing operation and maintenance on those practices. So one key piece that we wanted to be able to provide is a maintenance manual. So here's all the best management practices that are recommended, and here's 2 or 3 page maintenance guides for all of those practices. So we'll work over the next 3 months just with staff to put that manual together that then could be more widely distributed, but it certainly would be branded as a Macatawa watershed product. We also have a training website that was developed for us by Blue Sky Sessions. They're the ones that manage our current website. So this would be for the training that's required under the stormwater permits. So we need to work to populate all of that. Blue Sky built the basic framework of the website. We need to add the content. So we'll be able to expend staff time under the grant doing that over the next few months. And then another thing that we will start to do again is reaching out to the local municipalities to make you aware of the changes to the county stormwater standards and start talking about either updating or passing stormwater ordinances, which is not something that needs to be done immediately, but we will start working on that process, and with the goal of having every municipality in the MACC area, urbanized municipality, having a stormwater ordinance as part of your code. So you'll hear more about that as we go along. So any questions about where we are with the SAW grant? Okay. Just a couple other things, some dates I want to mention. One activity that we did earlier this month, Carolyn and I had the opportunity to participate in the River City Water Festival, which is Grand Rapids. One main reason why we decided we wanted to participate in that, even though it was outside of the watershed, is that they participate in our events quite often. It was the West Michigan Environmental Action Council put on that event. They come and help support our water festival, so we figured we would do the same. It was a really intense day of about 390 kids is what we ended up with. We had 10-minute presentations for 4 or 5 hours. So it was Carolyn and I took turns swapping on and off. It was, I don't know that we would want to do that again. It was a very intense day, but very rewarding, a lot of talking. And we gave them water quality bracelets to take home. We talked to them about what all the different colored beads have to do with they represent different types of non-point source pollution. So we explained to them what they meant, and then they were able to take that bracelet home. So that's how we know we gave out 390 bracelets. So it's a good general activity that helps spread the word about stormwater pollution, which is important wherever they are, whether they're in the MACC watershed or not. So it was a great event, but very intense. A couple things.
Along the lakeshore? Do we do something like that along the lakeshore?
Yeah, we will have the MACC Water Festival on July 9. So in the upcoming months, we haven't really started promoting that yet. We're still we're working with the Outdoor Discovery Center to put that together. So we have our kind of a slate of exhibitors ready to go. We have to get them officially registered, and then we'll work on public education and promotion. But that will
first year.
This is, I think it's actually the 11th time that it's been held, but it hasn't been consecutive or consistent. But this is the second time that it will be at Windmill Island. So last summer it was at Windmill Island, and we'll be back there this year. So, and I think, what did they figure? It was like 1,200 some people participated last year, and we had, did we have 20 some exhibitors? A lot of hands-on activities. So that's the difference with ours, is that we get to be outside, where at the River City Water Festival we were in the museum, so, which is very loud. So a few other things coming up. Tomorrow I will actually be at West Ottawa Middle Schools to participate in their reverse job shadow. I lost track of how many years I've participated in that. Prior to coming to the MACC, I actually did that as well, but it's a great way for us to get out and tell kids about what we do, and also get some public education in at the same time. So we have a bunch of leftover water quality bracelets, so I'm probably going to bring those to those kids tomorrow too. I did that with high school kids, and I don't know, they kind of got into it a little bit. Maybe the junior high kids will like it more. And then actually Carolyn will be doing the same kind of program a little bit later in May with Black River schools, which is a really great program. It's nice to go into the school, and you get to talk to so many more kids than if you have the kids come to where you work. So a reverse job shadow. And then end of April, I wanted to make sure some of these other dates got on your calendar, since they'll be so close to the next policy committee meeting. We've got our spring river cleanup on April 30. We haven't really started putting out promotional materials yet, as far as we usually have posters and postcards. So when we have those ready, we will email them, drop them off at your offices. And then a few other early May dates. On May 4, we are going to host a public presentation opportunity for the Hope College Advanced Environmental Seminar students. This is the first year that we've partnered with them, that they've held that class in the winter semester. Usually they hold it in the fall semester, and the students come and present at our watershed meeting in December. For various reasons, they're holding that class in the winter semester this year, so we're still going to work with them to host an opportunity for them to give public presentations. So that will be on May 4 at 4 p.m. at the Herrick District Library. Library closes at 6, so we got to be out of there by then. So we'll be sending it, as soon as I get information from the students on the topics of their presentations, we'll send out some advertisements about that. And then I did want to also let you know that May, and I think that's not right, that's May 6 and 7, I think is the dates of Kinderplatz. something is not right with those dates, or 7 and 8. It's the weekend. Saturday and Sunday after May 4 is the kind of the opening weekend of Tulip Time, and so MACC staff will be participating in Kinderplots again this year. We'll have a booth set up with the live macroinvertebrates. We did this last year and kind of had all staff on deck, plus we had Hope College student volunteers that came out and helped us with that, because those are intense days, 7 hours both days. So we will be out there, so bring your kids, your grandkids, and stop by and see us. All right, questions, comments?
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to transportation program, something we can all vote on.
Yeah, included in your agenda packet are a couple of amendments to the 16 program of the fiscal year 2014 to 2017 Transportation Improvement Program. Not, if you had a chance to look at the memo related to this agenda item, not big money, but based on the rules we have, we are talking about deleting them from the program. That requires an amendment. So the first one is a redirection of some CMACC funding in the amount of $2,500 that was going to be going to the West Train Collaborative. That is proposed to be redirected to our Clean Air Action Program. And then secondly, there was a job on US 31, a small allocation. Actually, federal funds was $582 for some, I think, signage on US 31 near exit 47. And that project is then rolled into a much larger effort that's going to be going on later on. I think 2021 is when the department plans on doing that project. So I don't know if it ended up being an orphan when other projects got moved and that one didn't move along with it. So we need to get that into its proper year. Any questions regarding those proposed amendments? If not, a motion to amend the 2016 program of the FY 2014-2017 Transportation Improvement Program as noted in the staff memo dated March 16 would be appreciated.
We have a motion and we have support. Any further discussion?
So it's moved by Jim and supported by Al?
Yes. Hearing no further discussion, call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And the next item here regarding some amendments to our Unified Work Program of 2016. Again, if you had a chance to review the memo included in the agenda packet regarding this item, very small dollar amounts, but again, we don't want to leave anything on the table. So John Lanham at a previous meeting had talked about our pre-Unified Work Program meeting that Elisa and I attend with our state and federal partners to talk about the upcoming Unified Work Program that we're going to be developing, but we also take a moment to look at what's happening in 2016 in terms of funding levels. We get those estimates several months in advance. We find out what the dollar amount's actually going to be, and we were informed that the amount for 2016 for our, what we used to call the Section 112 and 5303, Section 5303 dollar, now it's been, they've been combined. It's called the Consolidated Planning Grant. It had been increased for FY16 by $1,762. I don't want to leave that on the table, so I'd like to make an amendment, bring that into the UWP. We'll just spread that proportionally across all the tasks. And then based on your action just a moment ago, that has an impact, that redirection of that $2,500 in CMACC funding to the Clean Air Action Program impacts the UWP as well. So a motion to amend the Unified Work Program to add that $1,762 in consolidated planning grant funding and also the $2,500 in congestion mitigation air quality funding to the 16 program would be appreciated.
Jerry, okay.
That was Jerry and Tom?
Yes. We have motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Steve?
All right, and then just a quick update. I've been talking about staff has been working on the new Transportation Improvement Program covering fiscal years 2017 to 2020. So just wanted to extend yet another invitation to come to our party tomorrow. We're going to have an open house at the MACC office to talk about that. Most of you are fairly well briefed already on the information that we'll be providing to the general public about the projects and programs. 63 of them are proposed to be included in the new TIP, 2017 through 2020 TIP. So we'll be reviewing those, and of course, we'll also provide some exhibits for folks, reminding them about the US 31 work as well as the 16 program. And you know, we've got a fairly significant program here going in 16 with about a little over 43 million in this year's program itself. So that will be available for people to review as well. So if you get a chance to stop by, take a look at the exhibits, that's great. If you can tell a friend or a neighbor or coworker to stop by, we would certainly appreciate that as well. Gary Stevens and I were talking this morning on WHTC, and he made a good point that I think is useful to keep in mind as well, is that, you know, sometimes people aren't out to say, well, I'd rather have this project. I mean, we'll also have the list of unfunded projects available for people to review, and you know, they may comment on a project that did or did not get in there, but sometimes just want to share information that, hey, when you do this project, please keep in mind X, Y, or Z, and you know, that's good information, and we make sure to gather all that as well and get it to whoever the implementing agency is on the project. So they serve a lot of different purposes. So we hope for a good turnout and input on that.
Good. Thank you very much, Steve.
That's all I have under C.
Okay. Elisa, let's step it up.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am very excited to let you know that the Macatawa Area Coordinating Council has been selected to lead a team. And this is an effort that is being funded by the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors, as well as the Centers for Disease Control. So the program is called Step It Up, and you may be familiar with the Surgeon General's call to action, and it is basically to encourage people to increase walking. Recognizing the health benefits of physical exercise. And this is a training opportunity that we're excited about because it really complements many of the programs that we already have in place. And I wanted to just let you know that it is a training that will occur in April. So all of our expenses will be paid. And basically the commitment on our part is to put together an action plan, which, as I said earlier, already takes into account many of the things that we're already doing. And I wanted to just kind of remind you of some of the things that we have in process. In a moment, I'll be talking about Green Commute Week, and that is something that was very strong, that was recognized by the team when they were choosing who to invite. Our road safety audit of the 8th Street corridor, you've all heard a presentation last fall with some specific recommendations on how to improve pedestrian access as well as access for cyclists, and basically improve the flow along that corridor for all modes of transportation. Last month, or February I should say, we had a Road Safety Expo, which was many different partners working together, and the MACC led that effort with law enforcement as well as with the cycling community. So it was, again, many partners to communicate a message to the general community. And then two other pieces that I wanted to share. You know that we've adopted our regional non-motorized plan as well as our long-range transportation plan, which have specific recommendations to improve pedestrian access. So that as a package really gives a good picture of many of the things that we've been doing here in our region. But there's some other things as well that certainly are notable, and I wanted to just quickly review for you. One of which is work that's happening along the US 31 corridor. Many local units of government were wanting to make sure that pedestrian access was something that was improved, and had conversations with MDOT, and this is going back quite some time. But just those improvements I think are going to be very helpful at the intersections there. And then MDOT has been leading the effort, the Grand Region has been leading the effort to have discussions among many different partners. It's a regional pedestrian and bicycle committee, which the MACC has been part of. And so that's been a great opportunity to really learn, and so that was definitely another thing that was positive. Livable communities, starting in 2010, the Disability Network organized an event, so hosted that, and the MACC was involved in that effort as well. And two other things I want to just give credit to the Ottawa County Health Department. They've been leading a coalition called the Building Healthy Communities Coalition, and that's many different partners. We were part of that discussion, but they have a 3-year strategic plan. So the Centers for Disease Control was specifically looking at health organizations, and they were excited to see that that coalition was in place, as well as a county-wide walking program with the same name, Step It Up, which is going to be launched this next month at many different locations throughout our region. So there's a lot that's going on in our region that we're already doing. And this training is really going to help the various partners that are part of the team to put together an action plan, taking it a step further and focusing really on community design, transportation improvements that work together, and just really enhance what we're already doing. So that's why we're so excited about this opportunity. There will be a memorandum of understanding, which you'll have the chance to see in the future, but I wanted to let you know that we're super excited. This is something that we're hoping in the future will provide some additional funding in these different areas. So just wanted to give you a heads up and let you know that this is happening. Does anyone have any questions? All right, so we'll report back. The training will be next month. And then the next announcement I have for you is that Green Commute Week is in process. There's a committee that's been meeting since January pretty actively, and last month I gave you a short report to let you know that you were going to get postcards, which are at your place setting. And I wanted to also let you know that we have extended the dates. The week will begin on Sunday, the 15th. And the idea is that weekends are a great opportunity to share a ride, invite a neighbor, you know, if you're going to the same place, invite somebody that you know that drives alone to church, whatever that might be. We are definitely working on outreach. Last year we worked more outreach on the schools, which we're continuing this year, and we just thought this was another great opportunity to expand this community program. So a few little things I wanted to let you know about Green Commute Week. We've got some dates that are on the back of the postcard that you've been given. There is a video contest, so if you know of anyone who is especially talented in preparing videos, that's something that we found to be super successful last year, and it's just great to have people involved in that effort, so they help to promote it. There are discounts on food items, many different restaurants, including your lunch today, Wolfie's. They serve as a recharging station and offer discounts to anyone who participates. So, as well as the local bike shops offer discounts for their services with anyone who's participating during the week. And MACC Transit. I wanted to mention that they are offering free rides to anyone who's participating during the week. So we thank MACC for that support. There will again be a local business challenge, and local units of government are also welcome to do that. So if you know of anyone on staff who would be interested in sharing a ride, walking, biking, or using MACC during the week, those will get you points, as well as helps us in the end, because then we can record miles, we can look at the impact of the program, and then we can then see the impact in terms of air emissions. So we've talked a little bit about our technical committee about, well, how do you measure success? And that's a great way to do it, because we can tell you, for the number of miles that are saved, the direct benefit in terms of reduced air emissions. And then lastly, May 21st. Well, I'm almost forgetting, the school challenge is Wednesday, the 18th of May. And the last day is the 21st. Saturday, we're going to have a bike ride in the community and a breakfast. So you can see there's a lot that's folded into this. And I'm very thankful that it's not Carolyn and I only planning all this. We have a great committee that has decided to divide and conquer. So we're working together to coordinate this. So does anyone have any questions about any of those items?
questions, comments?
What's the local business community challenge? Like, what's the challenge?
The challenge is to have the highest percentage of participation. We have 4 different categories, and I'll use one business as an example. It's KLW Recycling on Quincy. They were the winners one year, and they promoted carpooling and biking. Those were the 2 modes that they promoted the most, and I think they had like 80% of their employees that were able to participate 2 days out of the week. And then in terms of categories, we have multiple categories because they compete against businesses their same size. So then they had a bike rack that was donated in their honor. And they were so excited about it, they got t-shirts for everybody and took everyone out for lunch. So there's a lot of team spirit. It's also very competitive. Some of the employers are already gearing up, and it's really fun. You know, and it's something easy. You know, you share a ride with a coworker for 2 days. So anyway, so that's the business challenge. And we have, we've had over the years, I mean, probably about 35 different employers that have participated, many year after year. But it's just been a great way to promote education and to get people involved.
Where's the ride this year?
We're working on that. Yeah, we have 2 different locations, and I'm hoping that by the end of the week, we'll have that nailed down, and then I will send you all invitations to participate. So, yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Jim?
Are the video contest rules online?
They are. They're on the Green Commute page, and it's basically just a short video under 2 minutes. Makes it a lot easier to review. And my children have already been told, my sons, that they can't compete as a family member. But yeah, but I encourage anyone else to share that message.
Thank you.
MDOT, any comments?
Just a couple. Lisa mentioned that we're working on a Grand Region non-motorized plan. It's we just reviewed some of the proposals. Eventually that's going to come into play. The overall goal with that is to look at exactly what we have. We now cover 13 counties. So we want to see what's out there in terms of non-motorized. And then what we want to start doing is looking at where can we make some vital connections. When I say we, I think we need it as a region, because funding for that comes from all sorts of different places. And then potentially have some prioritization happen with that as well. So when money comes available, maybe we can pick one spot as opposed to another. It's going to be a lot of work. We're going to do a lot of public input, but I think it's an important project, and that helps us make decisions regionally of where we want the network to expand. So we're looking forward to that. Another vital project going on for MDOT is, as you remember last year, I think it was about last year about this time that we were finishing up here in the MACC about the state, about the long-range plan. We do a statewide long-range plan. We're in the midst of doing that right now. And we're drafting white papers as part of that talk about specific transportation issues that are part of that. And now we're going to start going into public comment. We're going to hold some meetings real quick. There's going to be one in Grand Rapids, one in Muskegon in this area, but there'll also be the use of online resources for people to comment on this plan. It does set a lot of policy for transportation in the state, so it's something that is certainly important. And then what we like to do is finish it up in terms of original draft. Goes before the State Transportation Commission in July. So, and then the last announcement, and I don't know if this has been announced, but you know, with the reorganization, we went to 2 transportation service centers. We have the Grand Rapids and the Muskegon one. Muskegon covers Ottawa County. There's been a new director appointed to the Muskegon TSC, and she's here right now. I think most of you are familiar with her, Leanne Mikesell. But she's heading that up now, so she's the manager. So there's a lot of work to do. Obviously, we're real excited about the new funding coming through over the next few years, and Leanne will be heading up the challenges that the Muskegon TSC has to get the program out. So, but that's all I have. I'm not going to say anything else, I think.
Nothing else transportation related, huh?
No. Yeah, right.
And the good news is Leanne is very familiar with the MACC area. She's been attending the technical committee for quite some time, so she brings that familiarity into her new role, which is, a pretty important and influential one. So we wish her the best as she makes that transition, and it makes me feel good to know that she's familiar with our area. So that's great. Welcome.
Okay, let's move on into administrative issues. Steve.
All right, we were talking about bylaws earlier, and included in your agenda packet is a set of proposed bylaws with some revisions to them. However, I was made aware that not every single revision got included in that. I told Carolyn to send out the wrong one. So before we go any farther, there's a couple minor additions I want to make to them, make sure we're all clear as to what those are, and then we'll begin our discussion regarding them. So if you have them there in front of you, on the second page, the third article regarding composition, that speaks to the various categories of participants on the policy committee that we were talking about earlier. The third line there should read, that begins from each of the following 9 units of government, and then it should say city township participants. That's one of the revisions. So third line under article number 3, composition, it should say the city township participants. So we're bringing a little more definition to those categories. Likewise, if you go down 4 more lines, that begins the Ottawa and Allegan Board of Commissioners, it says county participants, so it shows showing that difference. And then still in Article 3 at the bottom, the second to the last line that begins contemporaneously, Port got left out of Port Sheldon. So right after 2013, Port should be in there. And then again, that city township category should be inserted right before participants in the last line of that paragraph. So it should read, Port Sheldon Township and Olive Township became city township participants. So those are the 2 changes on that page. Then continuing on to the top of page 4. And of course, really, this is the major revision being proposed in the bylaws, where we're talking about the addition of a representative to the executive committee. And there, at the top of page 4, that first line, again, in front of participants, it should say city township participants in the red. So make that addition there at the top of page 4. And then lastly, on page 5, the first line of Article 7, I thought it would be helpful to say the board may establish but also dissolve subcommittees. I've served on enough organizations. My church is the most guilty organization. They set up subcommittees and they last forever and ever and ever. So the board can establish or dissolve subcommittees. And that's it. So with those minor revisions there, we had some conversation about the revisions last month. Did not take action due to lack of quorum. We have a quorum today. So at this point, as I just mentioned, just to refresh your memory of last month, the major revision being proposed here is the addition of a city township representative from the policy to the executive committee.
And also removing the past.
Park Township will take the responsibility for having read the bylaws last summer and got this whole thing going. And probably something that we ought to do annually, maybe at the reorganization meeting. We appreciate the cooperation of Steve, but also the subcommittee, which included Kevin, it included Terry from Holland Shard Township, who's not here, represented by Vince and Howard. Our suggestion that we have a local, that we're now calling it city/township participant on the executive committee, isn't intended to be viewed as anything negative towards the way things have been at all. We're very supportive of this organization, Steve, his staff, and everything that goes on. We feel strongly that the investors, those of us that pay dues, that would be the city/township participants, should have some representation in the leadership of our organization. That's what it's all about. So, thank you for letting me say that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I served on the nominating committee, and you've got the memo. You've had discussion on it last month, and I would just agree with the comments that Jerry made. We think things are going very well, but thought it'd be good to have one city/township official serve on that board, and that's our recommendation for the amendment to the bylaws. And that the bylaws would also remove the past chairperson.
Correct.
That would be on the executive committee. So the numbers would probably stay the same, just the past chairperson would not serve, but at this time a city/township person would serve. So if you have any questions for us on the nominating committee, one of us will try to answer them.
I've got a couple questions. Number one is, Steve, do we ever do anything with task forces?
Occasionally, ad hoc committees have been identified to work on a particular, like I'm thinking of the 2010 census.
Correct.
You know, we agreed we were going to do that regionally, and so this group set up an ad hoc. Now that's different than a subcommittee as outlined in the bylaws, because that's a standing subcommittee that with its own, well, you appoint them, and then with its own removal of members and dissolution and so forth. So so a task force is kind of like the ad hoc committee, and that's one example.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because I've seen this in the past where we establish these subcommittees and we don't dissolve them, we keep them forever. But I've seen the same thing with task forces where they're established and they're never dissolved. And my question is there a way we could put the task force in with the board has established and dissolves subcommittees and task forces?
As a separate, now.
Right. I mean, just identify it, because if we, right here, it does not allow you to do anything with task forces because it's not mentioned.
Now, into another layer of this, in addition to the bylaws, you have entered into an agreement. This is starting to feel like it might be a work session at some point, since we haven't done this in a while. And there, it talks about a number of other things that come into the running of the organization as well. I mean, in terms of the cap, per capita cap on dues and other items of that nature. So my recommendation is something like that is best handled in an agreement, because the agreement has several clauses in there. From time to time, the board shall establish, and do that kind of thing. The subcommittee, I think, the organizers of the MACC wanted to make very certain, and I think MDOT and Federal Highway were requiring that the tech committee be established for the transportation planning purposes fund. So I mean that's why I got that special designation in terms of subcommittees. Whereas a task force, something I think more than ad hoc, probably falls under the agreement part.
Which is fine. A task force is designed for a specific issue, and once that issue is resolved or moved forward, the task force should be dissolved.
And I would say, just over the course of how things have worked out, like for instance, again, when the census was done and that effort was, that task force was disbanded.
And then the other issue I had is what Tom identified earlier in this whole voting matrix is very, very confusing. I mean, when I'm looking at this, who determines whether it's a transportation issue? Is it the chair or is it the board? I think it should be across the board that transportation has the right and ability to vote on all issues, and then they have the right to abstain, as Steve said, if they feel it is appropriate. But this is, for me, this is the first I'd heard of this, and it is very, very confusing to understand when you can and can't vote, according to the way Section 4 is.
Can I add to the confusion? I wonder myself whether I have a right to introduce a motion if it's a motion on which I don't have a right to vote.
Very true. Excellent point.
It's almost like you said earlier, the 3-4 of us could maybe sit over there in the corner and have our 15 minutes and leave.
We could start setting up a new.
Well, actually, how some organizations have handled this is they have, and it's usually large organizations, I'm thinking of the Grand Valley Metro Council right now, they have a separate entity that deals with transportation items and takes care of tip amendments and so forth, and I believe have the authority to do so. And then there's another structure that is more of works on the CEP and the larger strategic things. So, I mean, that's how, now that would mean another meeting for a number of you if you set up another, structure to handle that. Most smaller organizations, most small MPOs don't have that. So they deal with all the...
John, it's certainly been seldom, at least in 3 years I've been on this committee, where there's been a strong feeling with this group versus that group versus that group. Everybody kind of looks at what's best.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's certainly a lot of things in these bylaws that need fine-tuning. We're dealing with one aspect, and that is to allow a city township rep to be on the executive committee. And there's some other minor changes, but probably these bylaws almost need I hate to say, the task force or a subcommittee to really go through the bylaws, because you got to read them about 3 times to see if you get the same meaning at least twice. Sometimes it's very confusing.
A lawyer probably.
I kind of feel like Tom. A lot of these watershed issues are greatly impacted by the transportation.
Absolutely.
Issues. So where do we draw the line?
Absolutely.
And in fact, for that reason alone, road commissions and counties pay stormwater watershed dues.
Could I make a suggestion that we act on this amendment today, get the executive committee filled, and then have a couple people look the bylaws over and work on any changes that we need to look at? Sure. We could keep looking at this for months and months and months.
I agree with Howard.
Let's take care of what's the business today and refine it down the road.
Okay, so that is motion?
That's a suggestion. I'll make that motion.
Okay. Motion?
Do we have support? Okay, any further discussion?
Just one thing to point out is, we talked earlier about one vote, one participant, one jurisdiction, and you will run into situations where it's going to be actually two votes or so per jurisdiction due to the fact that you have a commissioner and a board member serving on the same committee or serving on this board. So you could potentially get 3 for one township actually. So those are some of the things you have to look at as well. So.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, but what I would like to do is have Steve explain the process that will occur after this vote.
Right, so if you read the last article of the bylaws, and as our attorney was discussing this with me, I misspoke, and then actually one of the documents attached with the bylaws revisions speaks to what happens beyond this. So a 2/3 majority of this group, of the entire board, as they say, has to approve it. So that's 13 yeas around this table. But then when you go to the article that speaks about revisions to the bylaws, I misspoke. I thought it took 6 of the 9 city and township boards and councils to essentially, I like to use the term ratify, the bylaws don't use that language, but ratify what action you took around here. Mark was our legal counsel, said, no, read that again. It's all the cities and township boards have to do it by a 2/3. The 2/3 applies to the action at each city and township board or council meeting.
Unanimous.
So it doesn't have to be, but it takes 2/3.
When it goes to the city and township boards.
Oh, it has to pass
All
all
of them.
9 by 2/3 by supermajority.
And I know this is going to complicate it, but we're still at the discussion stage. Given the fact that the bylaws haven't really been, and I'm going to say there too, because we haven't looked at them, okay? And there's all kinds of things that we haven't really followed, and it's not to be a criticism, it's a statement of fact. I would like to see us just approve what the committee's recommended and allow the appointment of a city township rep to the executive committee, and then have a separate group look at the bylaws and just take them one time to the governmental units that have to ratify them, rather than take this and then, I mean, it's been how many years, Steve, since this amendments to the bylaws?
07.
07. And it just seemed like there's so many little things in there that we ought to clean them all up. And why couldn't we just as a group agree to have a city township representative recognizing that we have been following several other things that also even pertains to the executive committee, and it'll work while we're getting all of the other bylaw issues taken care of all at one time. Doesn't that just make sense?
Who's the ideal group to clean up the bylaws? in your opinion?
Anyway, that's, and I know that technically doesn't follow what the bylaw says, but it makes common sense to me. But
Because, and I do appreciate that comment, because, you know, when we open up the bylaws, you know, maybe, you know, who knows where it could go in terms of how we govern things and do things today. You know, it could change quite a bit. So I would feel, what I'm saying is I'd feel very uncomfortable. I mean, we were parsing these a little bit more and said, yeah, we talk about members in one place and representatives in another place, and, you know, the definitions always don't line up, and the reference I noticed when we did the agreement in 07 could use a little bit of cleaning up as well, you know, just to tighten it up a little bit. But I would feel very uncomfortable because I don't know where really to start and stop. Are you happy with the one unit, one vote? Should we establish a separate entity that just takes care of transportation things? I mean, it could really, we could really go in a lot of different directions. So I'd feel very uncomfortable. I would certainly need your council and participation on kind of walking through. And then, of course, we'd pull out, if we did this effort, I'd pull out the agreement as well, make sure, you know, all the, I think there's 17 articles on that. We should look at those as well at the same time. But yeah, it's something I can't do by myself.
Point of clarification. The road, as representative of the road commission, I have a right to vote on this issue. However, my dues-paying unit of government, which is a member of the MACC, does not have to approve the bylaws.
Correct. Right, as there's, right. It's just
So you can vote on it, but you don't,
Okay,
but
so
you don't, your group doesn't have to approve it.
there's something else to address there then.
And with that said, I would like to declare that this does have transportation implications, so our transportation partners can vote on this very issue. So, any further discussion?
Was this document written up by an attorney or by the committee?
By the attorney. I mean, originally, I mean, the red lines I just did. Yeah.
Your Honor?
I gather that this proposed resolution would have to be by roll call vote.
It just says 2/3, right?
Right.
It doesn't have to be roll call, it just has to be 2/3.
I don't understand.
I don't see roll call.
Perhaps this was a question that
yeah, how would you know it's 2/3 if you didn't go to roll call?
Right.
That's it right here.
Yeah, right.
Although now I'm not 100% sure. I mean, the motion on the table is just to approve the revisions as stated in the document. But you know, the next step in this would be to start rolling it out to the cities and townships. But I agree with Gary's comment that I don't want to start that process of getting all your boards and councils to approve it if 6 months later we were to come back and say, well, we've kind of revamped things now. Again, yeah. My preference would be to do it all at once, but it will delay. I mean, with your concurrence regarding this, I mean, if adopted as presented as a matter of practice, the city or township representative appointed the executive could start coming to the executive committee meetings.
Sure. But not take this to the...
Well, right, yeah, well, it's just, if we approve it as presented, then I need direction, and do I start rolling it out to the township boards and the city councils as is, or do we want to hold back and maybe make some additional changes, vote on those, and then roll it out? I would need direction in that regard.
Make it as changes as is with, by the end of this year, everything is finalized for going to the units of government for approval. That way you got a timeline on there, that we know it's gonna get finalized by then.
And then it would just be, so I like the timeline idea, and I would certainly like some definition. Doesn't have to be maybe part of the action, but I can certainly work with, you can ask for volunteers to sit on a bylaws committee, but that should be identified as well. Who's going to sit down and work on this over the course of the next months?
I'm just looking at our township. It's not a big deal for me to take this and get a vote on it and be done with it and do it again. The way the wheels turn sometime, it could be a year before we're looking at the revisions.
I agree with Howard. Our board's comfortable with that.
This is a 2-minute item on my agenda, but maybe that's not everybody.
I don't think at the county level it's going to be 2 minutes.
But it's just the city and town, oh no, city and townships have to approve the
Right.
bylaws.
Or to MACC. So it'll just go to the city councils and township boards. So if folks feel like Howard, then certainly, we could just act on the motion as it's.
That's interesting. Again, so they vote, but they... Call for the vote? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carried.
We got our two.
We got 2/3.
We got our two. We know we got our 2/3. Yeah.
Quite frankly, we have our decision that passed, our motion passed by 2/3 vote. We have to have a roll call vote.
Sure. Yeah. All right, so we will do a roll call vote. You ready to record these? Sure. Mr. Story?
Yes.
We are going to do a roll call vote. Mr. Baumann?
Yes.
Mr. DeWeer?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. Bird?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsberger?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Copes? Yes, you are. Mr. Wright? Yes. All right. Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Mr. Klein-Hexel?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinstruck?
Yes.
Mr. Teslaw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carried.
Now we can leave.
We've got one more item yet.
Okay, and then we move on, and I believe Howard, you've got another motion you'd like to make.
Yes, because of the reasons stated, and if the bylaws are approved by the various boards, the nominating committee is recommending, first, this one doesn't need the change, but we're recommending to nominate David Van Ginhoven as an at-large policy board executive committee member. He lives in our township. He's been a part of the Zeeland community for years, Zeeland schools. He's been part of Zeeland Township Board for years, hasn't he, Al? On your township board, and the nominating committee thought he'd make a great addition. So that's one motion to nominate David Van Ginhoven to the executive committee.
For approval.
Vince. Supported by, this is the appointment of David Van Ginhoven.
And we have support.
All right, John.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And
then contingent upon our boards, if we assume that they're going to approve these amendments to the bylaws, we're recommending that Terry Nienhuis be appointed to the executive committee as the city/township representative on that committee, executive committee.
Okay, we have a motion.
who was support?
That was Jim.
Okay, Jim, okay. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Yeah, Jim.
Thank you. Steve.
All right, included in the agenda packet is the monthly financial report through February. Be happy to answer any questions regarding those. Hearing none. Likewise, the executive committee meeting summary of March 14 was in the agenda packet. Be happy to answer any questions regarding those. If not, all right. Wanted to bring forward a request, and that is to adjust our meeting schedule for the policy committee. I am proposing that we combine the May meeting and the June meeting and hold that on June 6th. That would be the first Monday of June. And want everyone to get your okay with that. It's going to be a very important meeting. We're going to take action on the agency budget, the FY17 Unified Work Program, and the 17 to 20 TIP. So a lot of important items will be on that agenda. June 6th, we're told that Park Township's space is available, so if Jerry's available, that's where we would plan on doing it. Anybody know that they'll have any?
So we're going to, if this is approved, we're going to cancel the dates we had for May and June.
Correct. Yeah, we'll combine the May and June meetings and hold it on June 6th. Yeah, right.
Okay.
All right.
Kevin, any words of...
Always words of wisdom. But welcome you to our fine city, and we've got some projects going on in this building. We've got expansion of our library upstairs that did away with one of our conference rooms, made a new conference room downstairs. It was about a $600,000 project. We are in the process of redoing our sewer plant, or clean water plant, I should say, and with collaboration from Holland and Zeeland Township, we're expanding that, taking them on as customers. We've got some street projects this summer in town, Jefferson Street, complete redo with water and sewer and new curbs and gutters. Park Street also, complete redo, water, sewer, and new pavement. And then we are completing our loop of around Herman Miller at Zeeland Hospital along Fairview, Maine, and Chicago Drive. And so that will be a complete loop. So when you take a walk, you don't have to walk on the street. So that will be completed this summer, I believe, also. So that's about it for us.
Great, wonderful. Any other comments from any of the other committee members?
What is Bill's status?
Since last I reported, he has been transported from Columbus Hospital in Columbus, Ohio to Grand Rapids. He started out in St. Mary to begin some rehabilitation, suffered a setback. I'm sorry, Mary Freebread, yeah. To begin rehab and suffered a setback, ended up in St. Mary's ICU for a little bit of time. The last report I had, which is over a week ago now, he was moved out of ICU in St. Mary's to a different floor. So I don't know if he is stabilized to the point where he can continue his rehab or if he's still at St. Mary's.
Could
Certainly.
Could you email an address that we could send a card to, maybe his home? Thank you.
So certainly, keep him in your thoughts and prayers.
Okay, with that, our next meeting will be at Port Sheldon Township, noon, April 25th. Any other business to come before this board? Hearing that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
Jerry?
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Who supported it?
I think Terry.
Your consideration.